How's it going, everybody? It's Tactard Ted. It is Monday, the 26th of September, 2022. How's everybody doing? Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you had a chance to get caught up with your family and everything else you got going on in the world. So, yeah, as I said, it's the 26th. One more day until the referendums finish up in the four republics, or oblast, or whatever you want to call them, regions of Ukraine that are exploring the possibility of leaving Ukraine and becoming part of the Russian Federation. Now, I will tell you that these are legitimate. Do you know how I know they're legitimate? They're legitimate because of, number one, the lengths the West are going to go to discredit them. The West has no business trying to discredit referendums. Referendums that are done in accordance with the UN Charter. If you guys remember what happened with Bosnia and Kosovo, there were no referendums. We basically willed it to be so, and it happened. We bombed Serbia, Belgrade, civilian population centers, to get those people independence that there never was a referendum on. So at least the Russians are going through with a vote. But the problem is the lengths that people are going to discredit them. If they're not credible, then they would fall flat on their face by themselves. I love how Ukrainian saboteurs have been saying that they are going to blow shit up, that they are going to blow up polling places. And then the Western media shows pictures of security forces around the polling places and immediately say, look, the Russians are forcing people to go vote. Really? No, what's happening is the security forces are there to make sure your buddies, the Ukrainian government, aren't killing a bunch of innocent people who are trying to self-determine themselves. You know, democracy. I know you guys like to use that and you think you know what it is, but apparently you don't. And democracy is a crutch when it only is democracy when you do it. When you have votes, it's only democracy. They're only legitimate when you do it. You know, they're only legitimate like the 81 million people that come out and voted for pedo Hitler versus Orange Man Bad. More votes than Barack Obama got. Obviously, all you Biden voters are racist because you didn't vote for Obama with the same zeal that you voted for Biden. But that's another story. The second reason I know that the referendums are legitimate is the lengths the Ukrainians are going to. Look, if these weren't legitimate referendums, if these weren't legitimate votes, then the Ukrainians wouldn't be expending so much precious ammunition they don't have, to bombard the areas where the votes are taking place to try to keep people from going out and voting. And the sad thing is, if they really were illegitimate as they claimed, then why would you be blowing up people who are being forced to vote if you really believe that? Why would you be doing that? If what you're saying that they're illegitimate, then the people you're blowing up don't want to vote anyhow. So quit being double-sided on this. Don't be... Yeah, they don't want to vote, but we're going to blow them up to keep them from voting. Come on, guys. Realistically, let's think about this for a minute. Use your brain for something more than a hat rack. Use your head for something more than a hat rack. And some of you folks would make very, very terrible investigators or police officers, because the way you're going about, the way you feel about Ukraine, you're doing it absolutely ass backwards of the way an intelligent individual would do so. When the police show up to a police call and both sides are making accusations, right? The police will interview one side and say, oh, okay, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did, oh, okay. They don't immediately go to arresting people. They get the other side of the equation unless they walk up and there's an act of violence happening. Then they just shut everything down and detain a bunch of people until they figure it out. But they still always talk to the other side. They get the other side of the equation. It's like the woman who claims abuse that oh, he kicked me out of the house, the evil bastard, he didn't like how I was doing things and he kicked me out of the house, he's evil, he's mean. Poor lady, right? So we just take her side, and the husband's obviously a son of a bitch. But you don't know that she ran up a $15,000 phone bill talking to her boyfriend in Iceland. Suddenly, that woman's not quite as pure, and perhaps maybe the husband had a reason to tell her to get the fuck out of the house. Unfortunately, that's the way you're going with Ukraine. Poor Ukraine. Poor Ukraine. You don't see what Ukraine's done to this prior. And you also don't understand that this is the second referendum being taken in at least two of these regions, because there was a referendum taken in 2014 to leave Ukraine. So I don't exactly understand what the big deal there is. These places have already said they're not Ukrainian. And there's a good possibility come Wednesday, when the votes are tabulated, they're going to say we are Russian. Now, if it was illegitimate and this was really all Russian land grab, wouldn't it have been easier in 2014 for them just to say, hey, screw you guys, we're joining Russia? No, they didn't. They declared independence. They were independent for 8 years. And now they've decided to attach themselves to a government that is probably more, that they feel at least, is more in line with how they want to live versus the Ukro-Nazis. And why do I say Ukraine is Nazis? Well, God, I've looked at both sides of the equation on this. I just didn't simply take what the Western media wanted to spoon-fed me. I actually researched. I actually looked at both sides of the equation. Last week, and there was a video, it's out there, that a German news crew was filming in Ukraine, and a BMP comes rolling by the video, and here, drawn clear as day on a Ukrainian tank, is a swastika. Now, I didn't put that there. Russian Spetsnaz didn't sneak in and put that there. And the Germans are rightly pissed off about it. They're absolutely pissed off about it. And it's not because it's cultural appropriation or any of that woke virtue signaling nonsense. It's the fact that the Germans had their experience with Nazism that did not end so well for Germany come 1945. And did not end well for a lot of European Jews and a lot of European Slavs, Gypsies, various other groups. It did not end. So when they see these sort of things, they get a little upset. They get a little appalled. They really wish that everybody else would kind of learn from their mistakes. But hey, the Western media has told you there are no Nazis there. That's obviously some sort of a mistake. It's got to be some sort of Indian symbol of friendship or some weird shit like that. You go, it's an ancient rune that really meant this. It doesn't mean that. What have you. Okay. Yeah. I think since the Nazis appropriated that symbol, I think that pretty much all other uses are forbidden. I just don't think it works. But the way the media has went out of its way to try to discredit this, but yet not reporting the lengths that the Ukrainians are going to stymie this, to keep people from voting, it just shows me it's legitimate. You guys are, it's no big surprise to a lot of you folks. I always said, if the press tells me that the sky is blue, I need to go outside and look up, because I don't trust any damn thing they have to say. And it's because of shit like this. They're only going to give you one side of the situation. You better not question them. If you question them, you're peddling disinformation. Like all the people that questioned things about COVID that are now allowing to be said, because it turns out that some of those things were validity. But when they were a wild conspiracy theory, and the media was so intent on silencing you, don't forget that. How frustrating was that to now know that you were right about a lot of things that the media and the government decided to silence you on? How frustrating is that? You know it's frustrating. And there's a little bit of vindication. Well, I will tell you, from somebody who's studied that region for a long period of time, all the lies that are coming out about Ukraine, and me knowing a lot of the shit that I'm talking about, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. And just the same as they wanted to shut down anybody who had something to say about COVID that did not follow the agenda, now they're wanting to silence anyone who has anything to say about Ukraine that does not fit the proven agenda. That's really fascism. You're not allowed to have an opposing view. It doesn't work. And just because you guys think that I'm all on the hook and everything is great and happy and rosy with Russia, it isn't. Let me tell you about some of the paradoxes I am hearing and seeing about the mobilization. Well, I don't believe that these 10, 15, 20 people showing up here and there to protest, I don't think that's indicative of how most of the Russians feel. There are problems with the mobilization. One of them I picked up on fairly quickly, fairly easy. I'm watching the oath ceremony. These guys have been back into the service. They have their digital floor uniforms, and they're taking the oath. Now, clear back to times of the Tsar, there is a very distinct ceremony that goes on. You are handed your weapon, and you then immediately swear your allegiance to the army you're serving, whether it was the Tsar, whether it was the Soviet Union, or now the Russian Federation. And it's a symbolic moment, and you are issued your weapon. And I'm watching, and something dawned on me very quickly. The newest weapon that the Russian Federation is fielding, as far as the long arm, is called the AK-12. It is a modern variant of the AK-47, a different lighter caliber, a lot of ergonomic benefits, including and operational benefits, to include a 2-shot burst. That is the newest and the top of the line, and there are pictures of some of the guys who've been mobilized units getting AK-12s at their swearing-in ceremony. One ceremony that I watched, the guys were getting AKMs. Now, an AKM is not the rifle that was immediately preceding the AK-12. That would be the AK-74. And there's a lot of little variants that really don't make it a huge number in regular military issues, so I won't bother them. The AKM, Automatic Kalashnikov modified, basically. The AKM was prior to the AK-74. So these guys were getting a battle rifle that basically came about modification of the Kalashnikov from the 1960s and mid-1960s at that. I mean, that was when the modifications were made. Now, they kept producing these weapons up through the 80s, I know. And they're not a bad weapon. But it's just the fact that you've got guys getting these. Now, I've been told that they were for training. I've been told this and that. I don't know what to believe on it. I will just tell you the optics are not good. And then you see all this other stuff on Telegram that guys were getting weapons that were rusty, bad repair. I don't know. Don't know what the deal there is. I do know that obviously there had to be some sort of an issue, because they sacked a general who was in charge of logistics, and the call-up was mostly his baby. Another issue about the call-up is the inconsistencies in who is getting called up. Now, as you know, my wife is from a village in Siberia, And let's just say that and that village is not highly populated. We're talking about 100 folks, maybe. I'd be surprised if it broke 100. In this village, at least 2 people were conscripted. One person was 45 years old, which kind of goes beyond what we were told the scope of the mobilization was going to be. But there are several overriding factors. Number one, if you're an officer, lieutenant and above, there is no age on you. You're an officer in the military, you're commissioned, you are subject to recall at any time. And that might be the deal with the one gentleman who was 45. The other overriding factor is military specialty. Are you in a technical field? Were you in a technical field? Now, he's 45 years old. So if he was a technical specialty 25 years ago, chances are that specialty may not be the same. Weapon systems are probably not the same. So it's interesting to me to see. And another thing I will tell you about all the Russian villages. The Babushki News Network. The grandmothers get around and there is a lot of gossip. So, you know, this made it down. This is how the news made it around the town. So I don't know how accurate it is. You know, so the telephone game. Somebody tells somebody, somebody tells somebody else. But apparently neither of the people, and there may have been a third one, I'm still not sure on that. The 2 folks that were called up apparently weren't real keen on going. You know, it is a pain in the ass. You think you're done with the military, and suddenly they say, hey, we need you to come hang out with us for a bit and take care. Yeah, you drop your life, you drop everything you got going on, and you go back to the military. That's got to be a life disruption. You know, there's no 2 ways around that. So, while I don't think everything is 100% happy, joy, it's not running like a well-oiled machine, but I don't think it's having the kind of problems that the West is portraying out to be. I will tell you this much. National Guard units that were mobilized to go to Iraq and Afghanistan had similar issues. They found that some of their equipment wasn't up to par. Now, one of the big changes with National Guard mobilization was early on in the late 70s, early 80s, the National Guard was said, hey, you need to maintain everything perfectly. This is going to, you know, the next war is going to be a come as you are war. You're not going to have time to re-up and re-equip. And lo and behold, during Afghanistan and Iraq, National Guard units that were called up were re-equipped, reorganized, and deployed with new shit. So a lot of that's going on with the Russians right now. A lot of them are getting newer equipment, but you know, we're seeing these guys show up and with getting their older AKMs. Possibly these are training weapons. I got no idea, but there are reports that some of the units that have been put together that are guys who recently left the military within the last 4 to 5 years, that some of these units are already being formed and already being sent to the area of operations in Afghanistan, but Ukraine. So the mobilization isn't going perfect, but it's not going bad. And I love all these people that just doubt that they're going to be able to scrape together 300,000 men. It amazes me, all the disinformation that's here, and the fact that we won't allow our people in the United States to see the other side of the coin. That really is, that's really a travesty. It absolutely is. Freedom of the press. No, there isn't. Freedom of speech. No, there isn't. Say something against COVID 2 years ago, you didn't have the freedom to say that. Say something against Ukraine or pro-Russian right now, you don't have the right to say that either. So let's just get rid of this notion that we have a free press or actual freedom of speech. Let's just get rid of that notion because it doesn't exist. Because as much as it's easy to say, yeah, you have freedom of speech. Yeah, you can also lose your job for freedom of speech. You can be ostracized. Your kids can be harassed because you believe something. That's not freedom of speech, folks. You know, that is not freedom of speech. When your whole family gets harassed for shit you say, that's not freedom of speech. That's not freedom of speech at all. Your freedom of speech is supposed to be protected. It's not. It's not. And you can say some of the most outlandish shit, and if it fits a leftist agenda, well, you're protected because we have to be tolerant. We have to be happy. We have to be all this stuff, but nah, not when it comes to the other. So anyhow, folks, that are my update on the referendums and the mobilization. Y'all take care. Bye.